Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. May peace be upon you. This is Edward Ahmed Mitchell, the Deputy Director of the Council on American Islamic Relations. I hope all of you are doing well. Welcome to today's episode of CAIR on Air, the Muslim Action Hour. We're so happy to have you with us. And I want to say a big thanks to our behind-the-scenes producing team for setting up our new format. As you can see, we're adding some graphics to the program and some other nice features that we hope you will enjoy. Big thanks to Ayana Jean, our communications coordinator, Adam Soltani, the director of CAIR Oklahoma, and everyone else who's helped to help us upgrade and advance this program. Today, we're going to be talking about a very important topic, and that is the issue of anti-Muslim extremists being appointed to high-level government positions by the Trump administration. This has been going on ever since the president took office, but even now he is still trying to do it, and now he's trying to do it at the Pentagon, which obviously is in control of our nation's military, which plays such a major role in so many different events all around the world. So today we're going to talk about two particular nominees that the Trump administration is trying to put in place at the Pentagon, who these men are, what their history is, why these nominations are so dangerous, and what impact they could have both inside and outside of the United States military, inside and outside of our country. To discuss those topics, I'm happy to welcome CAIR National's Government Affairs Director, Robert McCaw, and the Communications Director of CAIR Florida and a retired member of the U.S. military, Wilfredo Ruiz. Assalamu alaikum, Robert and Wilfredo. How are you both doing?
Alhamdulillah, doing well.
How about you, Wilfredo?
Assalamu alaikum. Very fine, alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah, good. Happy to have you both with us. Wilfredo, let me start by just asking you, how are you doing in Florida? Obviously, we've heard a lot about the news of COVID-19. Before we even talk about the program, just tell us, how are you doing? How's your family doing? How's the community doing down there in Florida?
Thank you for asking, Edward and Robert. The situation here is bad. It's bad because the government policies are not going hand in hand with the problematic we're facing in the street, meaning the allowing of, for example, Disney parks to open when Florida is the center of the pandemic of the whole world is not a good idea. And when we hear the discourses of that the schools are opening in Florida, when you have a tri-county area of Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach, where, as a matter of fact, the president official residency is a world epicenter of the pandemic. So it's very serious, the situation we see. This morning I saw a couple of blocks from the office another test center that just popped up in another public park. So things are getting worse and worse, unfortunately, here.
Well, we hope you stay safe, Wilfredo, and your family as well. May Allah grant you all relief. So, Wilfredo, look, let's talk about the topic at hand, which is not only what the Trump administration is doing with COVID-19, but also what they are at the very same time trying to do to the U.S. military. Robert, can you first tell us about who are these nominees that the Trump administration is trying to impose at the Pentagon? Who are these people?
Yeah, so the first individual, his name is Anthony Tata. He's an retired Army Brigadier General, a Fox News contributor, a short stint school superintendent, and now he's being nominated to the #3 spot in the Pentagon. It's the director of the policy team at the Pentagon. So this is a very influential position in the Pentagon that we could have an anti-Muslim extremist. The other individual, it's not a nomination. It could just be a direct hire. And this is Richard Huggins, and he would serve as the chief of staff to the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, which would be presumably Tata. And, Huggins was actually fired from the National Security Council when H.C. McMaster took over, when Flynn had to disgracefully step down as National Security Advisor, because Huggins had written a wild conspiracy theory laced memo saying that Muslims were partnering with the ACLU and Black Lives Matter and progressive liberal groups to take down Trump, and that there was a cabal of international bankers and Republican insiders trying to undermine the president too. So
That's
very conspiracy related.
Different century, same bigotry. It's absolutely familiar. What about Tata? What's the issue with him? Just what's the major issues with Anthony Tata?
Yeah, Tata just has a very long history of Islamophobic remarks, anti-Muslim, anti-Islam statements. He said on Fox News that there's an intent to harm Western society by Islam, and he's also said it's a truism that believing Islam is a threat has to be built into policy so we can strengthen our borders. So you have the nominee that would shape the Pentagon's policy saying on Fox News, we have to put into the books that Islam is a threat to America. He's made claims that Muslim immigration has disrupted European society. He has called President Obama a Manchurian candidate who was actually a sleeper agent for Muslims, and that
let's pause right there.
Yeah, I could go on. I really could go on.
We got to stop there, though. The man President Trump wants to put in charge of policy at the Pentagon claimed that President Barack Obama was a Muslim sleeper cell, and I believe he also threw the word terrorist in there at some point. This is the person who would be in charge of policy at the Pentagon.
Yeah. He's claimed that John Brennan, our former CIA director, was trying to take down America, to subvert America, and that he tweeted at Brennan a death threat saying he should pick his mode of execution, insinuating also that he should just kill himself. So this is a very unstable individual that more belongs on like an 8chan or a QAnon like Reddit board for conspiracy theories. And he's the Trump administration's policy pick for the Pentagon. Someone detached from reality, someone who's a hateful bigot. This is Trump's top choice for the Pentagon.
Right. So the nomination now it has not gone through, right? It's in the Senate right now. Wilfredo, let me pull you in. When you first heard these men had been nominated, well, first, Wilfredo, let's get your background first. Can you share your military history, your background, so we kind of get that feel for your unique perspective on this issue?
Okay. I was a naval officer. I was honored to serve our Navy as an officer, first as a JAG during the 90s, active duty from 93 to 97. And then again, I was sworn as an officer in the mid-2000s, but this time on the chaplain corps. I was a chaplain in the U.S. Navy for a couple of more years in the reserves. And when I hear this, Edward, it surprises me because it doesn't go along with what we're hearing where the armed forces are moving regarding the tolerance of and the welcoming of a diverse, cultured armed forces. For example, in this recent past year, we have heard of the armed forces embracing policies allowing the use of the hijab, allowing the use of the wear of a beard, allowing the use of turbans in the military. So when we see the military in one hand moving towards making space for a more diverse armed forces that are more representative of our nation, we still have the commander-in-chief try to cling on old policies of divisive policies. We cannot forget that Huggins and Tata are both from the same school as Steve Bannon, from the same school as the convicted felon General Flynn. So these are, as a matter of fact, Tata left the army with a halo of accusations implicating him in criminal conduct on forging court documents. So this is the type of people that do not belong in these very high positions. We're talking about a number 3 position in the Pentagon here. It's a very serious position, very influential position. People who will be making recommendations on foreign policy regarding the defense of our nation. And when you have people that are not with their feet on the ground, people that have been publicly espousing conspiracy theories, is not only undesirable for us as the Muslims in America who have served this nation, but it's even dangerous to our national security.
Yeah, I mean, it's bad enough that you've got anti-Muslim politicians, right, who have ordered the military to go abroad and do, horrible things, and so now you would not only have the politicians giving these orders, but you are in danger of having actual staffers leading policy in the Pentagon recommending that these horrible things be done to the politicians. So you've got it's bad on both ends now. So Robert, what is the state of the nomination? Is there a chance that this will be stopped? What's the state of play right now?
Yeah, good question. So before Tata gets his nomination hearing, there are at least 5 other candidates before him at the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee. And so the committee right now, it's actually reeled back from Tata's nomination. So you have committee chair Inhofe, who's basically said that they're looking at the nomination. They're not disqualifying the nomination, but they're definitely concerned about a lot of the revelations that have come forward about Tata. And at the same time, you've had at least 6 Democrats on the committee also say just outright that they're going to vote against him. So that's Senator Jack Reed, Elizabeth Warren, Richard Blumenthal, Gary Peters, Christian Gillibrand, already no votes. What CAIR is hoping is that more moderate Republicans on the committee, including Cory Gardner, Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, moderate, would actually go against this nomination because, they are concerned about the direction that such an unhinged individual could take the Pentagon. And also, now that we have this revelation that Huggins is at play as his top assistant, the committee should be even more concerned about this nomination because it's not just Tata, it's the people that would support him in crafting this type of policy.
You'd have an anti-Muslim bigot in charge of policy and then an anti-Muslim bigot directly working for him, reporting to him. So,
and hiring all the staff under him.
Right. 2 horrible ideologues reinforcing each other. Wilfredo, what impact do you think if the nomination were to go through for Tata and if Huggins were appointed as his second in command, what kind of impact do you think this could have first inside the military, what on the culture of the military, and then what do you think the danger could be outside of the military in terms of what they could try to get the Pentagon to support here and abroad in terms of policy?
I believe, Edward, that in the few months that are remaining of this administration, there's objectively very little they can do to change or institutionalize bad policies, right? It's just not enough time until the next elections. We don't know what's going to happen, but at least for this term of this commander-in-chief that ends in January, we're talking about 4 months, or probably 3-4 months after they get, if they get confirmed. But however, my theory is that this is part of a smokescreen that the commander-in-chief Trump have identified he can do in the remaining months prior to the election. So we get people really, these things take a prime stage in the discussion of the affairs of the country. Because he knows they are very controversial, right? They have been historically controversial. These are people that were fired or were asked to leave the armed forces at some point, and they're coming back. And they were asked to leave in bad ways because they were doing improper or illegal or even criminal things. And that's why they were no longer in the military. So that is why there is a resistance in the Pentagon to receive these kind of leaders. However, if the commander-in-chief ends up getting away with these nominations, I believe it's part of this smoke screen. First, trying to drive attention away from very important issues that were being discussed precisely on these days in the Congress, on how the Congress can act upon the news that Russians were paying, or Russians operative were paying Taliban agents or Taliban elements to kill American troops. And the fact that this was known to the commander-in-chief and that he have done to this day exactly nothing about it, it really puts in doubt even the so-called patriotism and love for the country and love for the armed forces that he so-called in every minute he can make a public appearance. So smokescreen for this big problem that Trump has, trying to justify why he have not done anything after he learned that the Russians were paying Taliban elements to kill American troops, and also obviously what is at center stage of the nation, the COVID-19 pandemic, and the evident mishandling he have done, him and his administration, in trying to control and keep American lives from being lost to this pandemic.
Well, it's an interesting point that, the people like Tata and Huggins, in their minds, the great threat to America is, Muslims. But it seems that it's not Muslims who are offering to pay to have U.S. soldiers killed. It's not Muslims who are running around trying to invading other countries, Crimea and all this stuff. This is an issue that's going on with Russia, but that's a whole nother subject. Robert, tell me, what's the danger if these nominations go through internally at the Pentagon and also externally in terms of whatever policies our government might be pursuing militarily?
Yeah, that's a great.
By the way, Trump. Yeah, I mean, if he's not reelected, obviously, then and they're appointed their term in January, presume. But if he is reelected and their terms continue, then we could be talking about a long-term thing. So either way, what's the danger?
Yeah, so this is the danger. First, Trump is installing, not members of like the B team or C team. These are like grade D rejects who have been matriculated out of the armed services. They have been matriculated out of the national security infrastructure because they are unhinged. They rely on conspiracy theories as fact and pattern-based evidence, and they have horrible personal indiscretions. So what we're seeing is that Trump is trying to elevate people who would not normally survive in this type of policy environments to the top of the Pentagon. Now, why? It's because both Huggins and Tata are firebrand loyalist supporters of Trump, and they are not concerned about fact-based evidence. They are concerned about defending the president's reputation and carrying out not just like a good executive order from the commander-in-chief, but really just answering to the president's whims and not pushing back. So when we had a situation where Trump was calling in the National Guard to put down, Black Lives Matter protests, there were generals that said, "No, Mr. President, that's a bad idea." People like Huggins and Tata would not say, "No, Mr. President." They would just say, "How fast can we do this?" And when you have people who are detached from reality and rely on conspiracy theories, alt-right conspiracy theories, they are not creating, fact-based, evident recommendations for the commander-in-chief. I would be very concerned about the president's Middle Eastern policy and how he engages with the Muslim world if it is through the lens of conspiracy theorists that think that Muslims are working with the progressive, Islamic political party organizations overseas are working with Muslims in the U.S. to subvert the agenda. That can actually put Muslim Americans in danger when the president views Muslims as a fifth column, like Huggins, like Tata does.
And, the obvious other danger is that these guys, as you know, Robert, could walk us into a war. I mean, if President Trump is already, alternates between being a peacenik to being a pacifistic to suddenly blowing up foreign military generals who are visiting foreign countries, you never really know with him. What happens if these guys are advocating bombing Iran or attacking Venezuela to go after Nicolas Maduro? I mean, who knows what sort of things these people would be advocating if they really, if Anthony Tata,
you know what they're advocating, because they've said, especially Tata has said in his posts on social media and Fox News, that he views Iran as one of the biggest threats to the United States, that Obama was a secret agent for Muslims, or placating to the wills of Iran to get the nuclear deal. they would suggest going to war with Iran.
The fact that we are even having to have this conversation after that man accused the first black president of the United States of being a closet terrorist leader, the fact that this is even a possible nomination says so much about what is wrong with this administration, with our country, with Capitol Hill. This should not even be a conversation we have to have. Wilfredo, tell us about the Muslim presidents in the United States Armed Forces. And I know this is an interesting and touchy subject, given that we as Muslims obviously largely oppose many of the military actions that are going on in the Middle East perpetrated by our country. But, not every member of the military participates in those. And there are many members of the military who are doctors or medics and engineers and other such things. So can you just give us kind of your perspective, as a former Muslim member of the military, on what it would mean to have people who are open anti-Muslim bigots running policy at the Pentagon? What if you were still a Muslim, trying to balance these, this situation, being in the military under a President Trump? What would this do to you? What would this say to you?
That will send me a lot of bad messages. Why, Edward? Because these are individuals that are associated, in addition to conspiracy theorists or criminals like Mike Flynn, also to Bolton. And Bolton was a war hawk and an advocate, a big advocate of conflict, of open conflict with Iran. And obviously, I will feel closer to a conflict when people like this are leading the military, and when we're living in an age where the national environment is towards really us leaving conflicts, like the longest war in our history with Afghanistan that we have not left still to this day, over 18 years of war in Afghanistan. But these are the people that are associated with keeping those conflicts alive, or what is worse, with bringing up new actors to the conflict, such as Iran. These are the same advocates for America to abandon internationally recognized treaties unilaterally, like we did with the nuclear treaty with Iran, that was historically done with the participation of the European Union, with the 5 permanent members of the United Nations, and other actors such as Germany, that were part of a very difficult treaty that was actually keeping us safer than we are here living today. The military is a very diverse armed force compared to other nations, right? Here, when I went, for you to have an idea, when I went to my chaplain school, officer school, I shared quarters with Catholic priests, with Jewish rabbis, with Christians from almost 2, 3, 5 different denominations. And that is what the armed forces are really composed of a very diverse, not only in that sense of the chaplain corps, but you can see it in the fleet or in the troops. There are estimates,
ethnically, racially.
You have immigrants, you have even people that are not citizens who have served this nation, as a matter of fact, who have been paid very bad by this administration, and some of them have been repatriated after they offered their lives in conflict to protect our nation and our democracy. So that is not well taken. This is, like I said, a military that is being positively seen or by those who have joined it in the sense of having the space where their culture, where their ethnicity, where their religion is protected and cherished as something that should not be messed with. And when we see a military giving 10 steps forward in that direction, in admitting people from a diverse faith groups that are just interested in contributing to our national defense, those individuals come to the armed forces really to bring them back to those times where there was no space even to make a prayer if you were Muslim, or you were seen bad if you were a Muslim. So there are over 10,000 Muslims serving the military in every aspect. They have line officers or soldiers or sailors, but you have in the professional fields engineers, doctors, nurses, dentists, chaplains, serving in different capacities in the armed forces, and also as civilians in the Pentagon or on some other positions in the military that have many other positions. So from being a very inclusive force, reflecting the reality of our communities around the nation, to try to be a selective force when again the minorities and be relegated and displaced with this kind of policies and look back. I don't see, for example, this how can we sit face to face with our Islamic countries' allies to plan strategies for our national defense and our national safety and security when you have these two individuals leading armed forces, individuals that have been very public and very open in demonizing Islam and demonizing Muslims, not only in America, but around the world.
Yeah, it would seem you could expect them to take the military, the Pentagon, national security policy in an even worse direction than it has already been going over the past several decades. So we will see what happens. Robert, I understand there is an action alert that people can sign calling on Congress.
Yeah, we do have an action alert right after this program. I'm going to repost it on Facebook and on our Twitter feed. So, go to CAIR National on Facebook or Twitter in the next 10 minutes or so, and you will find our action alert. And please urge your U.S. Senator to oppose this nomination.
Especially Mitt Romney, Susan Collins, Cory Gardner, generally have more moderate views, and they are involved in the committee, and hopefully will stand up and do the right thing here and say that, this sort of blatant bigotry is simply not acceptable. Shouldn't be acceptable anywhere, but especially should not be acceptable in the military, which has control over weapons and lives and war and peace. So may God protect us from such insanity.
Amen.
Wilfredo, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your service, and please stay safe down there in Florida. Robert, thank you as well, of course, for joining us.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon, inshallah. And everyone, check out our Facebook and Twitter pages for that action alert you can sign to encourage your members of Congress to oppose the nominations of these anti-Muslim bigots to top Pentagon positions. And again, thank you to everyone who's helping us to advance our program. We hope to see you all on Thursday at 3 p.m., inshallah, for the next episode of CAIR on Air, the Muslim Action Hour. If there are any topics you want us to address, just email us at info@cair.com. or put a note in the comments, and inshallah, we will hope to address those issues. Until then, assalamu alaikum. May peace be upon you.
Assalamu alaikum.